everyone. We are going to go live with the nutrition professor, Timaree. She has her ebook in the Vegan Health Bundle 2025, which is ending very, very soon. This is your chance to get our ebooks and courses at a discounted price. It's only $49 and it's worth 5,000, almost 5,600 dollars, but it's going away very, very soon. So if you are interested in getting the bundle, go check out the link in either one of our bios. Okay, let me just pin the comment and I will wait for Timaree to come on. And hello, Jasmine. And hello, AI Belinda. Are you an AI person? Hello, our excellence. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I'll let Timaree talk more about her ebook because it has 31 ice cream recipes. Yeah. I just want to see whether she saw my message. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, yesterday we did the Raw Food Worldwide meetup here in Kuala Lumpur. I made tons of recipes, lots of recipes from the Vegan Health Bundle. The crackers in Shader and Nutmeg Notebooks ebook was extremely popular. Okay, hi Timaree. Let me see if I can request. You can also request to join, but let me see if I can invite to join you. So you should get a button. Yeah. Request to join, accept. All right. Okay. Hi, Timaree.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you. Thanks for joining
Good to
us.
see. Absolutely. I had myself all set up on my laptop and then it won't connect to Instagram.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah.
um I have all my up, but this is gonna go easily because I want to show you equipment. So,
Yeah, I need to just kind of like move the camera around. It's a bit harder on
yeah.
Instagram because it's vertical, not wide.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I'm gonna have to just talk like this, and that's fine. I'm good at improvising as needed. So, and
Okay.
I'll just get my lighting a little bit more and we'll be fine.
Okay, great. Hi, Vanessa, Mary. So if anybody has questions for Timaree, please leave it in the question box below so that we can see it more easily rather than just leaving it in the comments. There's a question mark there, so click on that, and then if you can type your questions there, that would be great.
All right. So,
Yeah.
you're just starting your day and I'm
Yes,
ending mine.
yes, and I'm ahead of you guys.
Yes.
So we're in the future.
Yes, you are. You're at the time when I would be at work.
That's right. Yeah. Wow.
Okay. So, do you want to talk about ice cream?
Yeah, so maybe you can give like a 1 minute introduction about yourself and then you
Sure.
can start talking about ice cream the whole way. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, my name is Timaree Hagenburger, and I'm a registered dietitian. I have a master's degree in public health and an exercise physiologist. And I go, my nutrition professor business, that's the nutrition professor, because I was a college nutrition professor full time for 20 plus years. And I absolutely love helping people make choices that support their overall quality of life. And that goes beyond food, um, definitely beyond food. However, food is something that we do multiple times a day, and we have so much potential to tap into nature to bring the food choices into our own bodies. So I help people, and I have a community, the Foodie Bar Way of Life community. I wrote a cookbook, The Foodie Bar Way. I did that years ago. So this is, ah, see, now I keep it on my counter because I cook out of it every single week. This is not the kind of book that you just let sit on the cat or in the bookshelf. You actually use it. Um, so my most recent book was Knives Creams, 31 Flavors That Love You Back. And that was prompted by in my community, the Foodie Bar Way of Life, we had a couple people a few summers ago buy the Ninja Creamy. And I'm not a huge gadget person because you just end up filling your whole counter. And I know
Yes.
it happens, your whole counter with gadgets. So I really kind of held back, but there were several people who bought it, and I thought, well, I need to at least experiment with this to serve
Mhm.
my members, because a lot of the recipes that were being circulated, yes, they were made at home, but they were made with really heavy and not the necessarily the best ingredients.
Yeah.
So I thought, I better get in there. So I ended up buying one, and I was really, really cautious because I just kind of reserved about it, because it is one of the few single function machines. You cannot make rice with this thing, okay?
Okay.
It all it does, right, is make nice cream, or kind of frozen, it blends frozen things.
Yeah.
So I thought that's a big commitment for one piece of
Yes.
equipment. The other thing is, in my community, I don't have any expectation of that people will buy a ton of different pieces of equipment. I
Mhm.
really like to meet people where they are. So my college students, some had zero experience in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Their parents didn't cook. I mean, some of them, not even their grandparents cooked. So I can't expect, so I want to meet people where they are. So in the book that I contributed to the Vegan Health Bundle, I give instructions for using other equipment. By no stretch of the imagination do you need to buy a Ninja Creamy. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight or this morning for you, is to talk about how the different pieces of equipment, because that's something that a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience in the kitchen feel intimidated about.
Mhm.
If you say, well, a food processor. I work in the WIC program with infants and moms and kids, and they come from a variety of backgrounds. And so I can't just assume, oh, well, a food processor. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about the difference between them. When you do buy the bundle, you'll get the book, and in the book, there's a QR code, and it's a link to recipe or to cooking videos on YouTube, specifically unlisted videos for the nice cream that I did. But one of the things I talked about was the difference in equipment. So I know, Chef Ian, that you have a nice blender. You have a Vitamix blender.
Yeah.
I've seen you use that. So, um, are you okay with me just
Oh
explaining different
yes, yes.
things?
Please, please
Okay.
do. Be great.
So, one of the things you'll see, especially in the plant-based whole food community, which I am exclusively plant-based whole food, but you'll see a lot of high power blender, and Vitamix is one brand. It's not the only brand. I actually had a blend tech years and years and years and years, probably 30 years ago at least.
Mhm.
Um, I've been collecting kitchen equipment since I was probably 8. I mean, it
Hey.
was like, what do you want for Christmas? Knives, not knives to do anything bad with, but knives for the kitchen. And yes, some of you will relate to the fact that I had an easy bake oven that you cooked by heat of a light bulb, right? I mean, I have
Oh
been in
yes,
the kitchen
yes, yes.
forever.
I remember those.
They're so cute. Your little cookies and your cakes were this big, a little teaspoon. Um, but the Vitamix or these high power blenders, they're very different than a regular blender. A regular blender just isn't strong enough to really liquefy some of the ingredients to turn them into velvet. That's kind of how
Mm.
I describe it. A friend of mine purchased, I told her, I said, you really, when Costco has a deal, you've got to at least try the Vitamix. And she said, I don't know. She said, I like my smoothies the way they are. And then I saw her at Costco that like right after we worked out, and I said, okay, this is it. This is the one. She said, oh, okay, I'll try. And then she texted me, oh, I didn't realize I was chewing my smoothies before. She just didn't realize it would get that creamy. So
Right.
because these are super strong and the shape of the blender jar, it really makes a vortex. And I'm actually really particular about the blender jar. It became very popular to get the squattier ones. They call
Mm-hmm.
them under the counter size because
Mm-hmm.
this one is the classic and it sticks up. But
Yeah.
I don't think those short ones do as good of a job
Yeah,
of
that's how I feel as
really
well. Yeah.
pull. Yeah, I don't know. It just this makes a difference. So I always look for refurbished ones from Vitamix, and I
Yeah.
always look for the classic 64-ounce jar. The
Yeah.
other benefit of Vitamix to this, and there's no affiliate, I have no affiliate link with Vitamix, I wish, but is that they have a tamper.
Mm-hmm.
So this really can help move all of the product down in. So that's just nice. Blenders typically don't have that. And if you try to do that, the way that it's designed, you can't push it up to the blade if you have the lid on. So
Mm-hmm.
if you tried yourself to just use a scraper in there, you might end up with pieces of silicone in your food
Yeah.
because it could pull right in, where this is safe as far as the way that it is designed. But I have seen people who have forgotten to put the lid on, went right into the tamper.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. So there is the Vitamix, and this is basic one that I got refurbished. Okay.
Yeah.
So with the blender, you have to have some liquid unless you're doing some kind of like a grain. If you have a grain jar, then you can, or like you can take oats and you can blend them
Mm-hmm.
until they're a powder. But you typically need some liquid. If
Okay.
you just put like dry frozen pieces in there, it'll typically spin it up against, and it really won't do much. And
Yeah.
then if you add liquid, you're turning into a smoothie.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of sometimes you can play around with the amount of liquid, um, but you typically will need liquid. Now, a food processor. So and this is a very interesting, this is a Hamilton Beach food processor. It's an
Right.
8 cup. And I specifically have the model number in my brain, 70740. And that sounds crazy, but I taught my students for so many years, and I would recommend this one. Again, I am not affiliated with Hamilton Beach, but it's under $50 and it has lasted for, well, I bought the first one in 2015, I think. That's when I learned about it. So it's been 10 years. I use it 3 or 4, at least five times a week. Never had a problem with it.
Hmm.
And I have some much more expensive food processors. I've used all kinds. And I actually got the recommendation for this one from a chef who owned a raw restaurant, actually several raw restaurants in Los Angeles. And he said this
Oh, okay.
sucker outperforms a lot of other um, food processors, and it's really easy to clean. So
Right.
that's a plus.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
with a food processor, it's a little bit of a puzzle because because we want it to be safe. So it
Mm.
has to lock in. Usually there are little arrows, and so that's helpful. But there's two types of blades. So there's an S blade, so we call an S blade because it's kind of the shape of an S. And then there's usually a disc. So I keep the disc in the paper, the cardboard, because it's sharp.
Yeah.
And the discs you will see will always have holes, and those holes are for your fingers so that you don't need to touch the blade part. But the discs will typically be two-sided, depending on the model. And so it'll grate on one side and slice on the other. So there's a slice and then there's the grate. And so if you take out the S blade, you can pop this blade on top. But if you're looking to, let's say, rice cauliflower,
Mm-hmm.
that would be fabulous with the S blade. If you're looking to make nice cream, perfect for the S blade. Now, a benefit of a food processor is that you need zero liquid, zero, because you're just this blade is just moving. So you don't have to worry about it like you do in the blender. You can scrape down the sides and you can get it moving. Now, of course, if you don't have enough volume, then there's not enough for the blade to grab. But you could start, a lot of people start their first ice cream with frozen fruit, right? They start with frozen
Mm.
banana and they just pulse it and it starts to look like gravel and they're like, this isn't going to work. And then you just keep going and keep
Yeah.
going and then it gets really
Yep.
creamy. But you don't have to add any liquid. In fact, if you add liquid, you have a chance of the liquid coming through the hole and making a mess. So this
Mm.
is great for making salsa and things like that. But if you get too high, because you can leave texture, you can just pulse, 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 where in the blender, it kind of sucks it all down. I mean, it's a little bit harder to do the pulsing. It works fantastic in a food processor. So you can just get it to the size that you would like with just kind of the pulsing situation. And again, no liquid needed. So there's different jobs. You wouldn't make a smoothie in here though.
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
there's different jobs or different equipment for different jobs. And then lastly, we
Mm.
have the Ninja Creamy. So let me
Ah.
explain how the Ninja Creamy works. So this is, I'll get my hand out of the way. This is one of the older models. The new
Right.
models are fancy, but I'm happy I just have what I have. And the it's based on the idea of kind of a drill press, if you know what that is, where
Mm.
there's a blade and it's almost kind of like an auger, but like a drill press at the same time. And it just presses down into the container of the blended frozen ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
So as it works its way down and then works its way back up, it fluffs everything up. It breaks up all the ice crystals. And that's what allows you to have that creamy texture. So it usually comes out powdery after the first like the first cycle. And then if
Mm-hmm.
you do a remix, then it'll get a little creamier. Sometimes people add a little liquid in at that time. It's up to them. But that is what's happening is this blade is just pushing through. So ideally, the way I like to do the nice creams is I like to blend them first in a blender if I'm using the Ninja Creamy, because then you're not going to have any uneven, really hard chunks that could put the blade off kilter.
Mm.
Um, and then I don't have to worry about what kind of ingredients and if they're frozen or if they're not frozen when I originally blend them. So if I'm making a nice cream with frozen fruit in the food processor and that fruit gets too thawed out, it's going to be mush, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
but I also can't put in hard ice because that's just going to get stuck on. So there's kind of that, you have to wait for it to thaw a little
Yeah.
bit and then you can use it. Where with the Ninja Creamy, you can take it out of the freezer. I always thaw it for a little bit so I can scrape the top so that it's flat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put it in so that the blade doesn't get off kilter. Because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do that because then it could cut into the side.
Yeah.
But when my foodie bar way of life members asked me, the ones who didn't have one yet, is it worth it? Is it really worth it to buy that piece of equipment?
Mm.
And honestly, you don't need it. However, what I really like about it is that I can whip up a bunch of flavors and keep them in the containers. I bought more containers in the freezer. And then whenever I want some, I can just blend it.
Mm.
And it's easy, and then it refreezes. Normally when we think about something in the freezer, it'll say do not refreeze, right? Don't thaw something from the
Mm.
freezer and then put it back in the freezer. That's a food
Yeah.
safety, issue. But with these, you're never letting it get below icy. So you can blend it, take a few scoops out and stick it right back in the freezer. And then you'll be ready to blend again. You don't have to commit to eating the whole amount. So right now, I have several flavors in the freezer, and there was someone who loved there's a lemon bliss nice cream that uses corn. I know it sounds crazy, but you make your corn custard. Again, whole food, plant-based. And she loved it so much. She had 12 containers of it in
Wow.
the freezer ready. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." So that's fun. I mean, it like the old time when we used to go to the yogurt place and there were different flavors. Now you can have a whole ice cream parlor in your freezer. So for that reason, I think it's nice to have the machine, but I don't want it to hold people back from making nice cream because you don't have to have it by any stretch of the imagination. So, but yeah. So what questions does anybody have any questions? Um, do you have any questions?
So I don't see any questions, but I wanted to ask you, if you okay, so I wanted to say one thing first. So I tried, I saw your ebook and I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
really want to make the nice creams from here. And then I asked my boyfriend what flavor does he
Flavor,
like, and
right?
he just likes chocolate. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
not very. He's like when it comes to ice cream, he's not very ambitious
Adventurous.
or adventurous.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just
Yeah.
like, can I just have a chocolate? So I saw your fudge.
Yes.
Yeah, fudge.
Fudge-sickle-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fudge. I can't pronounce it.
That's okay. Yes.
So yeah, but then I wanted to make it raw because I was taking it to the Raw Food Worldwide meetup yesterday.
Right.
So yeah, instead of using your sweet potatoes, I use cashews, but then it means it's a higher fat content. And then
Right. Right.
you add beans, and then for the very first time, I thought like, oh, let me just try,
Yeah.
experimenting with sprouted chickpeas. And I like the fact that because you're
Yeah.
right, the sprouted chickpeas gives it it doesn't melt so easily. So I thought that was really nice that it doesn't melt very easily. But because I wasn't using sweet potatoes, I don't have that sweetness. So I guess I maybe need to add in a bit more days. Or I mean, like,
Yes.
what would you suggest? If
Oh, absolutely. No, and I actually talked about that with Samantha this
mm,
morning. We
I watch
did,
your show, yeah,
yes, we did that. And we talked about the fact that everybody's taste preferences
yeah,
vary so much, and especially when you start changing out ingredients.
yeah,
So if you're changing out a base ingredient that provides sweetness,
mm,
then you absolutely have to do something, in its place. And
yeah,
for those of us who have adjusted our palates to natural sweetness, the date sweetness, it's different sweetness than straight sugar.
yeah,
Like it's just, it's not the same.
yes,
So,
correct,
and I also remember mentioned that the cold numbs the taste buds.
Yes.
So things are going to have to be sweeter even
Yeah.
than you would think
Yeah.
so. So yes, in that situation, I would definitely have, add more of the dates, to get it to that flavor. And the chocolate fudgesiclish
Mm.
is not a deep, dark, heavy,
Yeah.
like death by chocolate.
Yeah.
It is more of, because fudge sickles here have always been kind of almost a malty chocolate,
Yeah. You
kind of
mentioned
that
that in your ebook I saw.
yeah,
Yeah.
light chocolate. So again, if someone's coming from like dark chocolate, straight chocolate, this is going to be chocolate-esque,
Mm,
And
mm.
so then they add more cocoa powder or
Right.
even the dark cacao powder,
Mm-hmm.
um, and some of that, and to add, more depth of flavor, and maybe even the cacao nibs.
Mm,
Nibs are great, but they're also no sweetness,
mm.
so
Yeah.
if that tongue is expecting the sweet, then it has to come in. um and then just normally, what sweeteners besides dates do you use regularly in your food?
I mean, right now I'm usually just using dates because
Okay.
okay, so I used to use a bit of maple syrup, although
Uh-huh.
that's not raw,
Right.
and also a bit processed. I also use coconut nectar because there used to be
Okay.
a company here in Malaysia that was producing really good coconut nectar that was local and it was sustainably
Yeah.
forested from the forest of Borneo here, so it's like from local. But then they stopped making the coconut nectar. They do have it in
Okay.
like kind of like sugar granules, but they don't have it in
Okay. In
liquid
the
form
liquid.
anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes I use like oh, when I went to Thailand, they gifted me some like coconut flower blossom. Um,
Okay.
yeah, some Thai
Yeah.
sugar thing. So I use that as well, but. I can taste the difference. I mean, I can feel the difference. If I use coconut nectar, I still feel a bit like, you know.
Yeah.
So now I just
Yeah.
stick to
Stick with
dates.
dates. Yeah.
But when I'm serving non-vegans, then like
Right.
you say, it's a different thing because their palate is different, you know. So
They're not.
for them, it will be
Yeah.
mild, it will be bland. It's not going to be sweet enough.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. And then the topping. So if he likes cherries, like cherries, sweet frozen cherries and chocolate really go well together. So you can play with those flavors as well, and textures, and adding sweetness from other places. You can also chop up dates and
Mm,
have that texture of the little pops of
yeah.
sweetness in there. Or do like a chocolate sauce. I have a chocolate sauce in there. So, you can add
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
layers of chocolate,
Yeah.
to have him have one of those experiences. But
Yeah.
absolutely. But that's so fun about the experimentation. So you do
Yeah.
a ton of that, to the point where you're like, "Oh my gosh, this Korean barbecue. I can't wait to try some of your recipes," but you're
Oh,
so done
nice.
with it, because you just
Yeah.
practice and practice and
Yeah.
make it, and you're just like, ah. So that is kind of what happens. But at the same time, it's so neat because it's a wonderful hobby. I am sure your boyfriend is ecstatic that that is something that you do, and he gets to benefit from being the taster.
Yes.
There are lots of hobbies that don't have the fringe benefits of being able to
Yeah.
taste, amazing
Yeah.
food. But that
Yeah.
also means there are sometimes you taste something and think, hmm, what does this need? What could we add to this?
Mm,
But always reaching, for the sweetness. Sometimes it's fun to use dried plums.
mm,
Dried figs can give a lot of intense sweetness, but
yeah.
it comes with flavor.
Yeah.
So, it's not as neutral. I
Yeah.
find dates are more, even though they're caramely, they're more neutral.
Yeah, I was
Um,
just gonna ask you,
so
do you use like dried apricots or dried
I
mulberries?
do.
Or yeah, I
Mulberry
like mulberries.
mulberries.
Yeah.
Oh, I love mulberries. I have two mulberry trees in our backyard.
Oh,
So I have a
wow.
white mulberry and then the traditional mulberry. And they're not producing a ton, although my white mulberry tree produced amazing. It's
Hmm.
just small this past year, but mulberries are excellent. And dried mulberries, I always keep some because they add sweetness. And again, it's a neutral sweetness. I really feel like it doesn't come with flavor, just
Mm.
a whole bunch. It just comes with nice sweetness. And I like the texture. So adding that in, if you're someone who likes texture, although that's also a preference.
Mm.
There are people who just like it
Yeah.
creamy. Just don't mess with mine. Don't add anything in there. I don't want anything weird. And then other people that like me, I love layering little walnuts, little mulberries, strawberries chopped up and put on top, and
Yeah.
that makes me happy to have all that texture.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what's fun though. This bundle is full, 83 different
Mhm.
resources. Many of them are recipe related. There's a lot of other things in there, but you will have your share and beyond of ideas to experiment with, all different all different backgrounds. I was thrilled to see the Korean barbecue, because that we don't see that as much. I love
Yeah.
Korean.
Yeah.
I take
That's
my
right.
daughter to Korean, but it isn't as common.
Hmm.
Even just that idea of Korean barbecue. And when we go, I say, okay, I'm vegan, so this is what, and
Yeah.
they'll accommodate me, but
Oh, nice.
it's not as common. So
Yeah.
I was very
Yeah.
excited
True.
to see that. One of the items that we like are the little fermented black beans. Every once in a while in banchan, we can get
Ah,
the little
okay.
black beans, the little sweet black beans. And they're yummy, but we're
Yeah.
always up for an adventure for eating. So,
Oh, we have a question.
okay.
So Oti Luke 711 says, how about monk fruit slash stevia slash lucuma?
So those are different sweeteners that have, as far as the research goes, there hasn't been a whole bunch of research with regard to safety, um,
Mm,
with the other artificial sweeteners. So when we're talking about aspartame or saccharin or any of those, well as to sucralose, the Splenda, I am not a fan of
yeah.
any of those. Not only are they weird aftertastes, but
Mm,
they can impact the gut
yeah.
microbiome. That would be my number one. Besides the fact that they confuse the body. Like, is there calories there? What's going
Mm,
on? Um, but stevia, I've grown stevia before,
mm,
and the leaves are extremely sweet, like one little leaf in a smoothie. Like, it's
mm-hmm,
that potent, but they are little green leaves.
mm-hmm.
So when you see a white
Hello?
a leaf, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's a
Yeah.
huge difference between a leaf and a white powder.
Yes.
So I am not, I know that's probably one of the like safer, better options, but I would rather really have people eat food. And if you want to grow stevia and you want to just pluck off a leaf and use it, you know more power to you, and see how your body responds, because everybody's body responds differently. I
Yeah.
haven't spent a lot of time with the monk fruit and
Yeah.
lucuma. I know there's some questionability about the monk fruit.
Yeah.
You're starting to see it a
Yeah.
lot in the commercial scene. What about you? Have you had a lot of experience with those, like yacon syrup?
Okay.
There's different.
So, when it comes to monk fruit, I'm very upset because
Okay.
the actual monk fruit is a fruit and it's round, and we Chinese have been using that in our soups and our desserts and our
Okay.
herbal things as a sweetener, and it's a whole fruit and it's all natural. But the manufacturers in the US, people like Lakanto, they say like this is monk fruit sweetener,
Right.
but it only has a bit of the monk fruit, and then they put in erythritol.
Erythritol.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when you look
Yeah.
at the packaging and you look at the labels, you realize it's not pure monk fruit.
Right.
And people
Exactly.
keep going like, "Oh, I'm using monk fruit sweetener," and I'm like, "No, it's more of
Turn the
erythritol. Like,
package around.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a small percent of monk fruit." And so monk fruit we call it lohon ko. So I think if you use but so if you use the actual monk fruit, then
Fruit.
as a sweetener, then I think, that's fine. But then um, it's it's usually dry. It's actually dry, and then you need to boil it, and then the water that you get, the liquid that you get, is
Is
sweet. So I don't know
sweet.
whether
Right.
maybe you could do that, boil that, and then use it as part of your liquid when you make the
Right.
nice cream. That could be
Yeah.
possible. So, but
Yeah.
like you said, it becomes like in a form of a white powder. I would never use it because
Right.
that's not monk fruit. That's not what I
No.
see, because we still see whole monk
Exactly.
fruit sold in like the Chinese herbal shops or
Okay.
the organic shops here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, when it comes to stevia, I haven't used the stevia leaves yet. I've seen it sold, but very rarely. They always
Mhm.
the most of the stevia here, like you said, in white powder, and I'm going looking at that like, no, that's too
Right.
processed. I'm not using that. I spoke to another raw chef,
Exactly.
and she said that when she used, I'm not sure, someone told me that she used stevia, but it has a bitter aftertaste.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know
It
whether I
they not
tried. I might have tried once and I didn't like the
yeah.
taste. So yeah,
It's not
yeah,
it isn't the same as
yeah,
fruit.
yeah,
And I think we're working too hard to make things too sweet
yeah,
to
yeah,
try to compare them to like, I
yeah.
mean, so I, it's a convenient thing for the manufacturers to be
Mm-hmm.
able to sell because it's like, oh, an alternative, great. But I think us working harder at using real food and really helping our tongue just get acculturated to that,
Yeah,
to real
yeah.
food, I think in the long run, we end up winning because none of these commercial products, like you said, this is very different than the monk fruit that you grew up with.
Yeah, yeah,
This is very
exactly.
different than stevia leaves that we don't we can't know how this is going to impact people long term because we
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen it in this commercial use um, for long enough.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I feel like I don't want to wait for that data to come out to say, oh
yeah,
no, actually, never mind. This is not good. No one's going to say, oh my gosh, figs are
yeah,
this is fruit, right? Dates. Oh no, not the dates,
yeah,
So I think,
yeah,
we just appreciate the natural sweetness from, it's nature's candy.
yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
I, I, I know we said that we're going to end at 6:30 and we're past
Yes.
that, but I do have one. Are you rushing off
Okay.
or?
Yes, I do. I actually have, I had 3 events today
Oh,
already.
okay. All
And
right.
so I'm like, well, but if there's a really quick question, I have like 2 minutes
Okay.
left.
All right. No, I just have a question
Yeah.
because when I went for the raw food meetup yesterday, the
Yeah.
one of the guys was saying that because uh they practice Buddhism and all that, and I think it's
Hmm.
Buddhism. Anyway, they don't believe in eating like ice cold food, and I
Okay.
practice qigong, and my qigong
Okay.
teacher says the same thing, like no ice, no
No
cold
ice.
food. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
how do you feel about that? And has anybody come up and asked you that question before?
No
Uh,
one has asked me about, no, I mean, an ice cream book, is probably not the book that you want to have unless you make the combinations and you just eat them without freezing
right,
them. I mean,
right.
the batters are so good. And it's really neat with plant-based whole food because you can taste before you cook
Yes.
or freeze
Yeah.
because it's safe.
Yeah.
In a conventional kitchen, you cannot taste a raw, you know, recipe because it's not
Mm,
safe. So it I love the way that these nice creams taste without freezing them. It's just the next level to freeze them. So I don't
yeah.
think that's a requirement by any stretch. I think they're excellent combinations that if you wanted to consume them, I don't know that I'd heat them up, but just you're saying ice cold
Yeah.
is
Ice
not
cold. Yeah.
is cold. So
Because
just
it
even chilled,
messes with the chi and the
the
your energy
energy and
flow.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, these don't need to be frozen. The consistency of them is creamy
Mm-hmm.
before they freeze. So you don't have to do that by any stretch.
Oh
Where
yeah. It'll
if
be like
you,
a
yeah, I
dessert
mean,
soup that, like,
yeah.
in Chinese culture we
And
have a dessert soup.
it's very interesting because I have in my book, my Foodie Bar Way book, I have a specific dessert soup. It's so funny that you say that because no one ever talks
Oh
about this, but I
yeah,
have
it's
a
very common
dessert
in the
soup.
Chinese culture.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to now. I'm trying to get it. Here it is. Refreshing fruit soup foodie bar. So
Nice.
this is making fruit soups, and I did a cantaloupe with orange and mint. I did a sweet melon soup with a hint of heat. So it's actually fruit soup. You can see. So yes, I've had that. I've had this book. I published it
Cool.
in
Nice.
2016. So yes, fruit. So you could do that. You don't need to freeze it. But this is the first time anybody's asked me about that. So
Oh,
yeah, there we
okay.
go. Excellent. Fantastic.
All right.
Well, it was wonderful to be with you.
Yes, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much. I
Timaree.
appreciate it. And buy the bundle, please. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss out because this isn't one of those things where they say, okay, it's back for 2 more days. No, they
No,
don't. When it's gone, it's gone.
yes.
And at least for East Coast, it's 9 p.m. because it's midnight and the West Coast
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow on the 10th. So 9 o'clock, you try to click 9:01 and you won't be able to pay. So it doesn't go up in price, it goes away. So
Yeah,
I've
it's gone.
had that happen to me in the past where I thought, oh, I'll get it. Oh, I'll get it. I'll get it. And then I missed it. So yeah, you don't want that to happen to you. See
Yeah.
you.
All right. Thanks so much, Timaree, and thanks everyone for joining. If any of you have any questions, if you're watching the replay, just comment below and we'll answer it. All right. Good night. Good evening, everyone, and morning. Bye. Robin. Okay, we're gonna end now. Bye bye.